Welcome. NOAA has just released its Global Climate Report for September 2021. This video is a summary of that report. September of 2021 was the 5th hottest September on record. Arctic sea ice was the 12th lowest on record, 23% below the long-term average. Antarctic sea ice was about average. It was the 3rd hottest September on record in North America, the 9th hottest in Asia, the hottest in Africa, and the hottest in South America. We had Hurricane Ida in the Atlantic Basin, and we have amazingly still ENSO neutral conditions in the Eastern Pacific, but we do have a La Nina watch on. Well, let's summarize the temperature for this month. Globally in September, the average temperature was 0.9 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. That's the 5th warmest on record. Land was the 2nd warmest, and ocean was the 6th warmest. In the Northern Hemisphere, it was the 5th warmest, and the Southern Hemisphere had its warmest September ever. Let's take a look at distribution of those temperatures. Here on the right, we have the percentiles map. You see we have no new record low temperatures. That's the dark blue. We only have one small area that was much cooler on average, and that was in Greenland. Of course, there's large areas here with much above average temperature. That's the dark pink shade. And the reds all over the planet indicate record warmest. So we're setting a large number of records all across the globe, which is why this was such a warm month. Well, let's take a look at the number of record highs and record lows, which is a good indicator of how rapidly the planet is warming. If you take a look at the daily records, there's a 4-to-1 advantage over new high temperature records compared with low temperature records. And that's even more exacerbated at night when it's 5-to-1. That is a function of greenhouse gases. They tend to keep the heat in better at night. The monthly record is even more lopsided with a 9-to-1 advantage over new record highs compared with record lows. So the planet is still warming and quite rapidly. Well, let's see how 2021 is stacking up against the previous years. With the month of September being the 5th warmest, that puts it firmly in the top 10. It's outperforming 2018, which is number 6. So it could go as low as number 6, but the last part of 2018 were quite warm months with 2 third places. I'm not sure we're going to get that with 2021. So it's likely to be somewhere in the 6th to the 9th warmest year on record, which, if that continues, the end of this year, 10 of the last 12 years will have been the hottest on record. I always like to show the data from Roy Spencer, who's one of the leading anti-global warming proponents in the climate community, in fact, one of the few. And this is his analysis of the data from the satellite instruments looking at the lower troposphere. That's a layer of the atmosphere from about the surface to about 13 kilometers with an average measuring height of about 4 kilometers. So it's quite a way up there and quite cold for a start. So it's not necessarily representative of surface temperature. However, a great deal of fuss was made about this very low temperature we got back. I think it was in February of this year, and that was an indicator that the sun was getting cool and we're going into a grand solar minimum. All other sorts of nonsense was being propagated about this, and it was the end of global warming. However, no fuss is being made by the fact that the temperatures in just about 6 months have gone up by 0.3 degrees centigrade in this layer. If you ignore the short-term variability and draw a line through this, you can get an increase in temperature. You can get a steady increase in the temperature of about 0.15 degrees centigrade per decade, which is very similar to what the surface temperatures are doing. So the satellite data is not showing cooling. The satellite data is not showing stagnation. It's showing about the same trend as the thermometer data, just a little bit less because it's taken higher up in the atmosphere. Now we'll take a look at the individual layers of the atmosphere in detail. The lower troposphere was 0.42 degrees centigrade above the long-term average. That makes it the 6th hottest September on record. The mid-troposphere was 0.31 degrees centigrade, making it the 7th hottest. And the stratosphere, which is the region that is cooling, was minus 0.41 degrees centigrade below the long-term average, which was the 13th coolest. Arctic sea ice remained at a low level for the 20th consecutive month, being the 12th smallest September on record. Moving on to the Antarctic, the sea ice extent was very close to average and represents about a 2% drop from the last September. The primary driver of all these climate problems we're having is the composition of the atmosphere. So let's take a look at the carbon dioxide levels in the current atmosphere as measured from Mauna Loa. Last month was 413 parts per million, and that is up from the same time last year by 1.78 parts per million. Despite predictions to the contrary, we are still in ENSO neutral conditions at the moment. Although we are in a La Nina watch, is not likely to start occurring until November and may only go through to February. And then we might be in for a long period of ENSO neutral conditions again, trending towards a El Nino mid to late next year. Just for completeness, I've included solar conditions. Solar cycle 25 is continuing to grow, as you can see here from the SIDC plot. The September average monthly sunspot number was the largest so far in cycle 25. So there's no sign of a grand solar minimum, despite what you keep reading on YouTube. And the sun is following a perfectly normal solar cycle. In fact, it implies it'll be larger than the last one. So a general summary for the September of 2021. We are in ENSO neutral conditions, but on a La Nina watch, which will probably happen later this year. Globally, September was the 5th hottest on record, which is setting 2021 on a pace to become one of the top 10 hottest years on record. High temperature records are being set much faster than low temperature records, which confirms that global warming is still heading on a pace. So until next time, stay safe and goodbye.